What to expect when you're expecting a roller coaster football season. That's coming up on Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Rogue Media Sports Network. That's at The Cam Show. If you're interested in keeping up with me on there, thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. Today, we're looking at a mailbag. It is our first mailbag of the summer. I love hearing from you guys and getting you guys involved. So I will apologize because I only had it on Twitter this week. I'll start leaving that down in the YouTube comments or prompting you at the end of episodes when I'm looking for those again. So in this mailbag, we're going to look at who's going to be the next great Baylor team and when that might come. This relationship between Dave Aranda and Mack Rhoades and how they are intertwined and how, one has pretty much hitched his wagon to the other, and looking at this next basketball season, which will be part of the episode Friday as well, but looking how that compares to a pretty good team that we have had in years past, and once again, breaking a cardinal sin of mine. We'll get to that later in the episode as well. But looking at who is going to be the next great Baylor team, I think this is a good place to start because we're done. We're done with sports for Baylor 2023, 2024. Up and down season, but ultimately one that the results weren't great. Football obviously has a really bad season. Men's basketball has a fun ride, and the Foster Pavilion is great to open that up, but losing the second round again. And hopefully they build on that for next year. Women's basketball is arguably the best of the lot. They go to the Sweet 16. Of course, softball goes to the Super Regionals. That was a ton of fun, but baseball misses the tournament again. And so it's overall not what we've been accustomed to, thankfully, for the last 10 or 12 years at Baylor. So who is going to be the next one to rise? Now, this question comes from, I want to give you guys the shout out here. This is from Baylor.Bears. I guess I'll use the @ name too, Jacob Willett, ranking the 5 major sports and how confident you are of success moving forward to the team. So I'm going to look at this in a very short window. I'm going to look at this for, let's say the next 2 or 3 years. And those 5 sports would be football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, and softball. Okay. I'll start with this number 5. I've been back and forth on this. Number 5, I'm going to go baseball, which is slightly contradictory to what I've said in years past here, or episodes past of, hey, I think this baseball thing is going to head in the right direction, and I do believe in Mitch Thompson. That said, I think they could have a successful year next year and not make the NCAA tournament. I think that's a pretty small chance of being quote unquote successful and taking a step forward and not making the NCAA tournament. But I think they can make the tournament next year. And even then they'll be, on the lower end, probably a 3 seed in someone's regional, because rarely do you see a Power 4 team get the 4 seed in someone's regional. So even then, I don't think it will be like super threatening as the number 4 team, which is football, because we have seen it at Baylor time and time again the last 12 to 15 years. Baylor has been able to, go down and brush themselves off and get right back up. I think this situation is different. Now, the other 2, of course, that I think of are 2017 and 2020, and both were year 1 of their coaches. Obviously, Matt Rhule comes in, it's a mess. They can barely field a team, like literally scholarship wise. They had like 70 guys on the sideline, which is supposed to be like 110. And so he did a great job putting that recruiting class together, and it was a 1-11, but it was truly a blip on the radar. They were a bowl team the next year, and they were in the Sugar Bowl the year after that. So that was the first time. And of course, in 2020, it's a COVID year. Dave Aranda's first year. He doesn't get a lot of time with his team really at all. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a time that he was ever able to meet with those guys before the season started, really. And It's a mess. They go 2-7. The next year, they have probably their best season in the program's history. So those are two times that they've been able to bounce back up. But the two common denominators in that is they were both by first-year coaches. This is a 3-9 from a fourth-year coach. I don't, and because this year I just don't feel terrific about it, which we will talk about later in the show. But that said, I could see, because of what we've seen in years past and, the way the Big 12 is going, Baylor could be in a good bowl game in 2 years and competing for a conference title in 2 to 3 years. I don't think that's out of the question at all. It's not something I'm like really confident in right now, but I'm more confident in that than competing for a conference championship in baseball. So that's why I have football at number 4. Number 3, this was tough. I'm going to go with softball. I really like the team that they're bringing back next year. They bring back an All-American. They bring back their best pitcher. They add a high school All-American. So I think it's not unfair to expect a softball team to go back to the super regionals next year and hopefully all the way to Oklahoma City. I know that's the kind of an internal feeling inside that program as they kind of lick the wounds from that Florida super regional, but I don't think that's unfair at all, which means I have women's basketball at number 2. I've said it in the last couple of weeks. I like the direction they're going a lot, and hey, the pressure's going to be on. This was a team that was in the Sweet 16 and very nearly in the Elite 8 last year. And has battled through quite a bit in the Nikki Collin era, but now it's like it's all Nikki's players, save Sarah Andrews, who is coming back. It's Nikki's style, it's Nikki's recruiting. I think this is a year that you can expect them to be in the top 10, potentially in the preseason, and absolutely could be challenging for the conference title. The winners last year were Oklahoma. They're out. The preeminent favorite last year was Texas. They're out. There's still some plucky teams, of course, and Audie's coming back at Iowa State, and Kansas State had a good team last year. I like this coach at TCU, and he had a good thing going before they all got hurt. So I think it's still competitive, but Baylor should be near the top of that discussion. And women's basketball, which leaves number 1 to be men's basketball, and of course that was almost always going to be the pick. I know postseason wise, it's been an underachievement the last couple of years. Don't get me wrong, I know that, but they are bringing in just a stacked roster this year. One that should absolutely compete for the Big 12 title, and the Big 12 in the men's game is much more competitive and also weirdly top heavy than it is in the women's game. So this is like Titans, man. Rothstein had Baylor in his top 4 in the preseason, and I think it was number 4. And they were 3rd in the Big 12. And Iowa State was right behind them, and they had Houston and Kansas ahead of them. That is going to be a titanic conference this year. But if Baylor stays healthy, I think they should be able to compete with it. And honestly, in most years, I would say with this roster, they would win it. But the Big 12 is that tough this year. So that's in the near future. I think there are some good teams that we're going to be able to root for. And I think men's basketball, of course, will have the most hype and hopefully be the most exciting, more hopefully be the most successful, which is what I'm picking them to be in the short-term future. So thank you for the question there. And thank you to Gametime, a sponsor of today's Locked On Baylor episode. Y'all, I've told you this for a while. It's true. I'm looking at it for baseball tickets now too. It is the only place to go and buy. You go to Gametime and you see the all-in pricing right away. So you're not getting doubled up on fees. I had a friend who had this problem recently. They went to another third-party ticket site and they were like, I can't believe where all these fees came from. I was like, that's why you should have went to Gametime. You see the all-in pricing right away. You see the actual view from your seats before you hit purchase. And they have the lowest price guarantee. If they don't, Gametime is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And man, am I going to be looking this up every day for NBA Finals tickets. I know a lot of you from the Metroplex that listen to the show are going to be doing that as well. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege, locked on COLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets lowest prices, and that, of course, is guaranteed. Okay, kind of staying on the theme with men's no, we'll do men's basketball later. Sticking on the theme of football and the unpredictability of this year. Another question that came in, this one coming from former host of Locked On Baylor, Drake C. Toll, which I know some of you are rolling your eyes that I'm answering his question. I kind of am too, but Drake, I think this is a fair enough question. I'd like to answer. He said, has Mack tied himself to Aranda? If the ship does hoe south, I think he meant go south, is Mack in danger? If the ship is righted, do they both get lifetime contracts? A lot of questions in here. One comment underneath it is actually from our first question asker. What is righted? I think that's a good question. And it kind of goes with another question we got in the comment section, which was about the expectations this year. So let's answer that. Let's go piece by piece. Has Mack tied himself to Aranda? Yes. Yes. And I believe I've shared the sentiment before, but I'm a big Mack fan. I think Mack has gotten a lot of undue crap the last year or two from Baylor fans. Does it stink that Matt Rhule left? Yeah, but what was Mack going to do about that? $70 million guaranteed to him from the NFL. That wasn't going to get stopped. The Kim Mulkey experience saga of her leaving. I think if more people knew what was going on behind closed doors and in the walls, they would have understood it. I get it. At the end of the day, it's a Hall of Fame coach leaving, but I think it had about run its course here in terms of the stuff that I heard that was going on behind closed doors. And I think Kim probably wanted a new challenge as well, to be honest with you. And that's kind of how that went. I thought he got a good hire in Nikki Collin. I thought he got a good kind of outside the box hire in Nikki Collin to add someone from the WNBA rather than another women's college basketball coach, which you look at the way the game is going at the college level, it's starting to look like the WNBA level, which is starting to look like the NBA level in terms of the game style and the strategy that teams are using. The women's game is as close to the men's game as it's ever been. Now, this is not like a biological debate. Like, I'm just telling you based off gameplay and strategy. There are still successful women's teams that just feed it to the post 600 times a year. Not the case with some other pretty good women's teams too. So all that to say, I like that hire, and I like most of the hires that he's made. Now, he has taken a bold risk here by keeping Dave Aranda on for another year as the football coach. And we know at any school that, except maybe Kentucky or Duke, like if you are tying it to the football program, that's all that matters. So if you continue to have great men's basketball, that's fantastic. Baseball school, great. But the one that brings in the money is football. And if you don't do well in football, that's it. Most schools, all they care about from their athletic director is who they are hiring to be the football coach. And I thought he had a dynamite hire in Matt Rhule. And I thought he had a real good hire at the time in Dave Aranda. And that can still be turned around. But if it's another disaster and they're 4-8 and Dave Aranda's gone, then I think that will raise some questions from the powers that be at Baylor, because they know it doesn't matter how great we are at everything else and as good as a job as Mack has done in everything else, which I truly believe. It's football or bust. That said, he's got a great job within the university. He's got a great relationship with Dr. Livingstone, the president of the university. I don't foresee that happening soon. I don't. But in terms of hitching his wagon to it, that I think that's fair to say. And the ship being righted, what would right the ship not to have a losing season again? I know that's easier said than done still at Baylor, even with the success that we've seen, but the success shows that it's doable to be sustainable. Like, honestly, I know we can't play this out because he was only there, 3 seasons. I don't think Matt Rhule is going to have another losing season anytime soon. That guy could coach, and more importantly than that, he could recruit the hell out of a team. And I think that was like, I couldn't foresee that. I didn't see them going to the Sugar Bowl every year, but I could have foreseen them not having losing seasons after that. And that's the standard at Baylor. You can get a coach like that. So I think that would be the ship being righted. In terms of lifetime contracts, I know it's kind of hyperbolic, but no, I can't see that happening. Just things can go wrong. Things can go wrong from a football standpoint at Baylor. And again, not to pile on Dave Aranda too much, but let's just say he has 2 good seasons here and you sign him to a lifetime contract. Like we've seen 3 losing seasons. You know, there aren't many guys who have a couple of losing seasons and then, you know, the school sticks with them and they become a national power. Duke basketball under Krzyzewski is the only one I can think of. I'm sure it's happened other places, but you know, we've seen that this team can lose under him. So lifetime contracts, I don't think so. But yeah, I think Mack has tied his ship here. And while, you know, let's just play out the worst case hypothetical and that Baylor football has a bad season and he gets fired, Mack does. I wouldn't think that's just. Personally, I wouldn't think so, but that is the name of the game. And you've got to get a football hire right. Even if you're 1 out of 2, you shoot 50% ain't bad. You have to get it right. And that could spell the end. But I don't think that will happen. I don't, good or bad. The other one that's kind of tied to that was what are the expectations for the season and kind of, you know, what looks good for a Baylor team. This is coming from Becky Bailey. Appreciate the question there. I'm going to stick with the prediction of you got to make a bowl. You got to make a bowl for it to be a successful season. Now, I'm also of the camp that if you go 6-6, or let's say 7-6, you win the bowl game, you get a winning season. That does not mean, okay, 4 more years of Dave Aranda. I think this could be a 2-year play out here, especially with some of the things that were outlined in Aranda's, you know, strategy to get back. And that one of those things was keeping a recruiting class, keeping your young players here, getting a good recruiting class, keeping good talent going through the door at Baylor, good talent from Texas, I should say, because that has not happened the last couple of years. So I say that to say the things that Dave Aranda outlines for getting back to success probably takes more than 1 year. It probably does. So 6-6. 7-6, winning record is a good place to be this year, which, oh man, that kind of hurts coming off the tongue after being ranked number 10 to start the season 2 years ago. You got to have a winning record. And then I think you got to do it again in terms of keeping the job safe. And I think getting everyone back on board for Dave Aranda, which I hope is the case because I think there's a good coach there. And I hope, I've said this before, I hope we are not the Browns and Dave Aranda's Bill Belichick. I think if it doesn't work out at Baylor, he's going to find a place where it does work. And we're going to be seeing Dave Aranda being a head coach at a high level. That's just my personal opinion. But that's too much football. You guys know I'm much better at basketball or nothing. So let's get into basketball. Interesting question coming out of the comment section for this mailbag. Okay, so the question is looking at this year's team. This is at Biased Bear BU. I like a good Biased Bear. I do like that. Who also said I have a good dog. Thank you. That dog is Tara, by the way. It's technically my girlfriend's dog, so she's not with me right now, the dog. But I knew that would be a way to get you guys to actually look and engage in the tweet. So I miss Tara. She's great. I miss my girlfriend too. I'm moving back in with her in a couple months. Don't worry, guys. Basketball Bear at Bias Bear BU says, comparing this BU B-ball team to 21? ? Will I compare them? Sure. I did say a couple months ago, Cardinal Sin is comparing any team to the 21 champs. And it's more like, I don't want to hear, oh, this Baylor team isn't good because they didn't do this in 2021. You know, that was arguably the best college basketball team this century. So, like, you could still be a good team and not look like the 2021 championship team. Now, that said, when you look at the roster right now, which we don't know if it's completed or not, looking at the roster, there are some similarities. There are. I'm not saying that this is going to be the 2021 team, but there are similarities. In fact, we had Brandon McKinnon on before the tournament, and he was talking about how there was a bunch of similarities with this past year's team, 23-24. And he laid it out really well. I agreed with him. I think the one thing we had both agreed on was that there was no Yves Missi on the first team, on the 21 team. There was just no like-for-like comparison there. But I think there's more of a comparison with this year's team. Okay, so looking at the center position, Josh O was a guy I like. I wish he had taken a bigger step last year, but he's a versatile defender, even for a big guy that looks like he's got heavy feet. He can move around a little bit, and can be something of a rim runner for you. Okay. Flo Thombo was the starting center in 2021. He was a good defensive player. I thought his best defensive year was 21. And he wasn't much of a rim runner, but could give you something on the glass. Josh O can give you that. Okay. I think that's fair. I think Josh O will be better this year than Flo was that year. Then you look at forward, where I think it's really interesting. Norchad Omier or Mark Vidal. I think Norchad has all the things that we loved about Mark Vidal, and then more offensively. I mean, he averaged double figures. He averaged a double-double. Mark Vidal never did that, but he was a great, tough, gritty rebounder, Mark Vidal, and had the mobility to cover guards at times as well. Wasn't the ideal thing, but he could do that. Norchad Omier can also do that. He's a dog defensively, a terrific rebounder, and plays bigger than he is, which is the same thing we said about Mark Vidal for years. And one thing I think is interesting to look at, we saw Flo without Mark Vidal the last 2 years of his career, and he wasn't the same player, wasn't the same defender, wasn't the same rebounder. And I thought, maybe someone like that needs a terrific rebounder who always gets great positioning and draws a lot of attention playing next to him. And that's what Norchad Omier is. So that could take something off Josh O's plate, and I think they could complement each other very well. And then I'm going to look at 3 guards here. Okay. And this might be a different shuffle when it comes to the starting lineup, but I'm going to look at Jeremy Roach, VJ Edgecombe, and Jaden Nunn. Okay. Jeremy Roach, and this is where it's not like for like, but I think these guards kind of accumulate what you had in that 21 team. Well, actually, I shouldn't even say that, because get this out of the way. 2021 legitimately had 3 All-American guards. Only 2 got All-Americans, but Maceo Teague absolutely should have been an All-American too, and was a great underrated player for those Bears teams. We don't underrate him, but the nation did and does. He was a fantastic defender. He never got credit for. Solid guy, muscle-wise, so you couldn't back him down as when he was defending you. You couldn't knock him off the spot, and obviously a great shooter. The hitch looked weird, but it went in a lot. So a great on-ball and off-ball defender too. Obviously, the best of the defenders was Davion Mitchell, was one of the best, defensive player of the year, lottery pick, and Jared Butler was the sharpshooter that was sneaky athletic as well, and was an All-American, should have been Big 12 player of the year. So that's a lot of production. But I think there are some mirrors of the backcourt, not as much as the front court that I just laid out for you, but like VJ Edgecombe, super athletic, explosive. I think offensively, he can give you about what Davion Mitchell gave you. He's not going to be as good a three-point shooter, but I'm just talking pure production. That guy can get to the basket and can play a little bit bigger than he is. And some have said he has the potential to be a great defender. That's tough to do in 1 year. Jeremy Roach has some Jared Butler in him. Not all of it, but a good three-point shooter, shot over 40% from 3 last year. Good spot-up shooter, good enough defender, one that I don't think he gets enough credit for, much like Jared Butler in his time. And Roach would be the primary point guard, and we saw Butler play I've said he's the best backup point guard we've had the last 5 years. We've been searching for someone like that ever since. So I think Roach can give you a little bit of that. And then Jaden Nunn gives you a little bit of that Davion. He's the closest to what Davion Mitchell can give you defensively, which is still a far cry because Mitchell was the best player in the country at that. And we've seen also a bit of the Davion offense when he gets hot. He's a good enough shooter, and he was the best guard last year getting to the basket. He's the best penetrating guard they had. So again, he's not Davion Mitchell, but I'm saying you have a little bit of it there. So if I were to give it like out of 10 out of 10 being this is just like the 2021 team, it's like a 6.5, 7, maybe. And that's still a damn good team. The league is even better now than it was then, especially with adding Arizona. But I think you get a little bit all the way around. So that's what I'm thinking. The front court does look like that team a lot. And you're playing a 3-guard set. I'm thinking they're going to play a similar style. And I think this team takes a step up defensively that we've wanted the last 2 years. I really do. Anyway, let me know what you think. Drop that down in the comments below. If you have a question I'll probably have one next week. Drop that down. I'll keep a view of the comments. Just put like, hey, for the next mailbag. Put that question down there. I'd love to hear from you guys about that. Let me know what you thought about, where Baylor needs to be safe in football. I think that's a question we're going to revisit a couple of times throughout the summer before the season starts about this Mack Aranda relationship. Drop those down in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell for whenever we drop an episode, which is now 3 times a week on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll see you later on Locked On Baylor.